What if the very thing the world mocked you for became the reason one man couldn't look away? The late afternoon sun hung low over Silver Creek Station as the stagecoach rolled in, trailing a cloud of red Texas dust. Horses snorted and stamped, wagons creaked, and the air felt heavy with the kind of heat that made tempers short and judgments quick. That was the West in 1880. Hard, honest, unforgiving. Margaret Sullivan stepped down from the coach with her carpetbag clutched tight against her chest. Her heart pounded as she looked around at the rough wooden buildings, the hitching posts, the wide dirt streets stretched under the burning sky. She had traveled all the way from Boston for this moment. For a chance. For hope. For a new life. But hope didn't last long in the West. People paused in their chores. Women outside the general store whispered behind their gloves. A man leaning against a wagon gave one look at her and turned away. Others did the same. Margaret saw it all. The quick glances. The quiet snickers. The faces that shifted from interest to disappointment the moment they took in her fuller figure and plain wool dress. She steadied her breath. She had expected judgment, but not this fast. Not this sharp. Mrs. Henderson approached, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and a strong, motherly presence. She shook Margaret's hand firmly. "Welcome to Silver Creek, Miss Sullivan," she said. "Come with me. Don't mind their eyes. Folks out here forget their manners faster than the wind forgets a promise." Margaret tried to smile, but her chest felt tight as she followed the woman to the white-painted boarding house. Inside, the rooms were simple but warm, with fresh bread cooling on the kitchen table and sunlight pouring through clean windows. It felt like safety, at least for a moment. "3 gentlemen will call on you," Mrs. Henderson said as she helped Margaret settle. "Good men, established men. They've been looking for wives." Margaret nodded. That was why she came. Her family back in Boston needed help. Her father's health was failing. The doctor bills were drowning them. Becoming a mail-order bride had been her last, desperate choice. But she still believed in hope. The next morning, she dressed carefully in her best gray wool dress. She pinned back her thick auburn hair, trying to tame the curls that always fought her. She told herself she was ready. She wasn't. Mr. Peterson, the banker, arrived first. He sat rigidly on the parlor chair, sipping tea without meeting her eyes. His disappointment showed in every line of his face. He left within minutes, mumbling about urgent business. Mr. Collins, the store owner, stayed longer. He asked polite questions. He tried to be kind. But his eyes drifted away from her face, and something gentle inside Margaret withered. Then came Mr. Whitaker, the newspaper man. He didn't hide his disapproval at all. "My wife must be presentable," he said simply. "Someone the town looks up to." He left without finishing his tea. By evening, Margaret lay on her small boarding house bed, staring at the ceiling. The truth felt like stones on her chest. No one wanted her. Not for her heart. Not for her mind. Not for her kindness. Only for a picture-perfect idea of a wife. And she didn't fit the picture. Later that night, she heard hoofbeats outside. Slow, steady. Not rushed like a town cowboy. Not loud like a ranch hand racing home. This rider moved with purpose, confidence, and calm strength. Curiosity pressed her to the window. A tall man rode into the fading sunlight on a golden-coated horse. His black hat cast a shadow over his face, but she could see the way he carried himself. Sure. Steady. A man who built the world he stood on. Jackson Wheeler. She knew the name. Everyone did. The richest rancher in the territory. A cattle baron. A horse whisperer. A man whispered about more than the preacher's sermons. People said his eyes missed nothing, that he saw more than others, that he understood things most men ignored. He stopped near the bank, speaking to someone on the porch. Even from her window, Margaret could tell he moved different from the other men in town. No arrogance, no swagger, just quiet power. Then, as if feeling her gaze, he turned. Their eyes met. Her breath caught. He didn't glance away, didn't judge, Didn't flinch like the other men, he simply looked. Calm. Curious. Almost gentle. For the first time since she arrived, Margaret didn't feel small. She felt seen. He touched the brim of his hat and rode on into the dusk, leaving her standing breathless by the window. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept seeing his eyes, steady and quiet. She kept hearing the laughter of the townsfolk who mocked her. She kept wondering why a stranger's single look felt kinder than 100 polite words from men who rejected her. The next morning, her world shifted again. Margaret stepped out onto the porch just as the sun rose over the prairie, and there he was, Jackson Wheeler, sitting tall on a bay mare, dust on his boots, sunlight on his shoulders, eyes fixed on her like she mattered. "Miss Sullivan," he said, touching his hat, "I heard you know horses." Her heart jumped. "I used to help train them with my uncle." His gaze softened. "Good. I could use someone like that. There's a Morgan stallion coming through on the train. I'd be honored if you'd help me take a look." She stared at him, stunned. No man here had respected her enough to ask her opinion on anything, but this man did. I would like that," she whispered. He smiled. A real smile. "Then ride with me at 8. He tipped his hat and rode off, leaving her on the porch with a pounding heart and trembling hands. For the first time since she arrived in Silver Creek, Margaret felt something new. Hope. And this time, it didn't fade. What if the one person you never expected to notice you ended up being the only one who truly saw your worth? Margaret stood on the porch the next morning, the cool Texas breeze lifting the loose strands of her auburn hair. Her heart raced when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Jackson Wheeler rode into view with calm confidence, guiding a sturdy bay mare beside him. "Morning, Miss Sullivan," he said, touching his hat. "Brought Daisy for you." Gentle as they come. For a moment, Margaret forgot to breathe. No man had ever brought a horse for her. No man had ever looked at her the way he did now, with quiet respect, not pity, not judgment. She approached the mare carefully, letting Daisy catch her scent. The animal nickered softly, leaning into her hand, as if greeting an old friend. "She likes you," Jackson said. "Animals know good people." Warmth filled Margaret's chest. She mounted with practiced skill, settling into the saddle with ease. Jackson noticed. "You ride better than most cowboys," he said with a hint of admiration. Margaret felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I learned young." They set off toward the station, the morning sun warming their backs. Silence settled comfortably between them. It wasn't the awkward kind she felt with the suitors who rejected her. With Jackson, quiet felt natural. When they reached the station, a train whistle echoed across the empty land. Workers unloaded crates, and among them stood the Morgan stallion. He was magnificent, tall, proud, spirited. But something was wrong. "He's favoring his left hind leg," Margaret said immediately. Jackson raised an eyebrow. "You saw that from here?" Quote. She walked closer, studying the animal with careful eyes. The stallion tossed his head but didn't shy away from her presence. "Travel stiffness," she said. "He needs rest and slow work, but the bone is sound." Jackson watched her, not the horse. "Show me what you see." She did, pointing out the stallion's stance, the posture, the slight twitch that signaled pain, not injury. Jackson nodded slowly, his eyes filled with something deeper than interest. Respect. They guided the stallion to a calm space, working side by side like partners who had done this for years. Margaret's hands moved with steady confidence. Jackson matched her pace, letting her lead. "So," he said after a while, "why did you come all the way to Texas?" She hesitated. The truth felt heavy. "My father is sick. My mother can't manage alone. I needed to help them." She looked at the horizon. "I thought a good marriage here might give us all a chance." Jackson studied her quietly. "In this town, how has it treated you?" She let out a small, humorless laugh. "About as kindly as a cactus." Quote. He looked away, jaw tight. "People out here forget their manners. Or maybe they never had any." "They judge fast," she whispered. "They look at me and see no beauty, no value." His eyes locked on hers. "I don't see that." Her breath caught. "What do you see?" she asked softly. He held her gaze a long moment. "Strength," he said. "Heart. And someone who knows horses better than any rancher in this territory." Her throat tightened. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. They returned to the ranch with the stallion. The Wheeler Ranch spread across the land like a kingdom, a sea of green pastures, white fences, and horses grazing under the big Texas sky. It took Margaret's breath away. "You built all this?" she asked. "Started with one broken-down cavalry horse," he said. "Fixed him up, sold him, bought 2 more. Hard work builds more than muscle. It builds a man." He paused, "But it means nothing if you build it alone." His words hung in the warm air. Inside the barn, the foreman, Tom, greeted her with a handshake that surprised her. "So you're the horsewoman everyone's talking about," he said with a grin. "We've needed someone like you around here." Margaret blinked. "Everyone's talking about me." "Talkin', good things," he said proudly. "Word spreads fast." She didn't know how to process that. All her life, whispers followed her like shadows. For once, they weren't cruel. "Tom," Jackson said, "show her sugar." Tom led a chestnut mare from the stall. "She's been limping all week. The boys can't figure it out." Margaret knelt next to the mare, gentle hands brushing over the leg. "Here," she said, "heat above the hoof. Early abscess." Tom looked stunned. "You found that in seconds." "I've seen it before." Tom's voice softened. "You got a gift. A gift. Not a flaw. Not a burden. A gift." As they walked the ranch, horses poked their heads over fences to greet her. She soothed a nervous filly. She laughed when a foal nibbled her skirt. She belonged here. She felt it down to her bones. That evening, Jackson invited her to dinner with the ranch family. The long table was filled with laughter, stories, warm bread, and the smell of stew. Nobody judged her. Nobody whispered. They welcomed her like she had been there her whole life. It was more than kindness. It was belonging. Just when Margaret thought the day could not hold any more surprises, wild shouts came from outside. "Mustangs broke through the north fence!" a stable boy yelled. Chaos exploded. Horses panicked. Men grabbed ropes. Dust rose like a storm. But Margaret didn't think. She moved. She climbed the fence and stepped into the corral, where a wild black Mustang reared in fury. The ranch hands froze, shouting for her to stop, but she walked forward slowly, humming a gentle tune her mother used to sing. Her voice carried calm into chaos. The Mustang's ears flicked. Its eyes softened. "That's it," she whispered. "Easy now." The horse stepped closer and lowered its head into her hand. Silence fell. The ranch hand stared in disbelief. Jackson's chest rose and fell like he'd been holding his breath the whole time. When she turned, his eyes were full of something she had never seen directed at her. Wonder, admiration, maybe something deeper. "Miss Sullivan," he said quietly, stepping close. "I've never seen anything like that in my life." For the first time in years, Margaret felt seen. Not for her looks, not for her failings, but for her heart. And for something she didn't yet realize, she had. Her own kind of beauty. What if the love you were ready to walk away from turned out to be the one thing you couldn't live without? Margaret didn't sleep much that night. The memory of the Mustang lowering its head into her hand replayed over and over. But even stronger was the memory of Jackson's face when he looked at her afterward, like she was someone rare, someone important, someone worth seeing. The next morning, as the sun painted the ranch gold, a telegram arrived. Young Jimmy rode up fast, his face pale. "Miss Sullivan," he said, handing her the envelope. "It's from Boston." Her heart dropped before she even opened it. "Father worse. Doctor says months, not years. Mother needs you. Come home." Her breath shook. She folded the paper, tucking the pain deep where no one could see. But Jackson saw it anyway. He approached quietly. "Bad news?" "They need me back home." She forced the words out. "I have to leave on Thursday's train." Silence settled between them like dust. "When will you come back?" he asked softly. She stared at the horizon. "I don't know if I can." Jackson's jaw tightened. "Then let me help. I can send money. A nurse. Whatever you need." Margaret stepped back, her voice trembling. "I can't let you fix everything for me. This is my family. My responsibility." "And what about us?" His voice cracked just enough for her to hear the truth beneath it. "What am I to you?" "My employer," she whispered. It hurt to say it. It hurt him more to hear it. His face fell. Not in anger, in heartbreak. "Is that all?" he asked. She turned before he could see her tears. Later that day, trouble hit the ranch hard. The new Morgan stallion collapsed with severe colic. Jackson was away on business. The doctor was miles out delivering a baby. Everyone else was fighting to save the herd from rising creek waters. Only Margaret stood between the stallion and death. For hours, she walked the suffering horse in circles, whispering to him, coaxing him to keep fighting. Her arms trembled. Her dress clung to her with sweat and dust. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. When Jackson came racing back into the yard, he froze at the sight. Margaret, exhausted but unbroken, leading the staggering stallion like a lifeline. Relief washed over his face. "Margaret." She looked up at him, her eyes full of pain and strength. "He needs you now," she said softly. "Help me save him." Together they worked until the stallion finally settled, the crisis passing. Margaret sagged against the stall wall, too tired to stand. Jackson caught her before she fell. "You saved him," he whispered. She shook her head weakly. "We saved him." Then she stepped back, remembering the train she had to catch. "I should pack," she said. "Margaret," his voice broke. "Don't go." Her heart felt like it was tearing in two. Before she could answer, the foreman rode up fast with a telegram in hand. "Boss, urgent message from Fort Worth." Jackson opened it and went pale. Margaret read over his shoulder. "Sullivan and Sons stable in danger. Railroad seeking ownership. Need immediate answer. Her father's stable. Her childhood home. Everything her family had left. If the railroad took it, they had nothing." Another rider arrived before they could speak. Edwin Porter from the railroad, smug and certain. "Mr. Wheeler," he said, stepping off his horse. "We need your land for our new line. Give us the right of way, and we'll erase the Sullivan debt." Jackson's eyes darkened. "I'm not selling my ranch." "Then the Sullivan stable is ours by morning," Porter said. "Business is business." Margaret's chest tightened. She looked at Jackson, really looked at him. The man who saw her as more than her looks. The man who treated her as an equal. The man who believed in her when others laughed. And he was willing to sacrifice everything for her family. She realized the truth all at once. He didn't pity her. He loved her, and she loved him. But love wasn't enough to stop the railroad. Margaret stepped forward, voice shaking. "You're threatening a dying man's home." Porter shrugged. "The world moves forward." Jackson clenched his fists. "Not through my ranch." Porter smirked. "Then the Sullivans lose everything." He rode away, leaving dust and dread behind him. Margaret turned to Jackson, tears swelling. "My family. I know. We'll lose everything. I know. And you'll lose your ranch." He looked at her with quiet fire. "I don't care about the land. I care about you." Her breath caught. "We'll find a way," he said. "Together." "But how?" Jackson exhaled, steadying himself. "There's only one offer I'm making today that I won't take back." He stepped closer, his voice trembling but firm. "Marry me, Margaret. Not because you need saving. Not because I can fix everything. But because you and I were better when we faced the world side by side." Her heart stopped. "Jackson, if you walk away, I'll understand. But if you stay, I'll spend every day proving you were never the woman they mocked. You were always the treasure they were too blind to see." Tears filled her eyes. She reached up, touched his cheek, and whispered the one word that changed everything. Yes. What happened next spread across Silver Creek faster than wildfire. Jackson and Margaret confronted the railroad together. They found an old land survey showing he owned a narrow mountain pass the railroad needed. Without it, they couldn't build through the hills. The railroad caved. The Sullivan stable was saved. The Wheeler ranch stayed whole. And Silver Creek's people, those same whispering, judging people, watched in stunned silence as the mail-order bride they mocked stood tall beside the most respected rancher in Texas. Their wedding took place under the old oak tree on the ranch. Margaret wore a white dress with silver threading that shimmered in the sunlight. Jackson stood waiting with a look of pure love, love so open and honest that even the harshest tongues in Silver Creek fell silent. When she reached him, he whispered, "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." For the first time in her life, she believed it. When they kissed, even the wild Mustang Midnight let out a soft nicker, as if blessing their union. Years later, folks would say that Margaret Wheeler changed Silver Creek forever. She trained horses no one else could touch. She ran a school for young women who wanted to work with animals. She raised a family with Jackson on land built not from wealth but from courage. And whenever young girls felt unwanted or unseen, the townsfolk whispered her story. She was mocked for her looks. But one cowboy saw the beauty no one else could. And that made all the difference.